Hello, WiCCD members. My name is Maya and I am WiCCD's Education Committee Director. I'm happy to introduce our series, Finding Your Niche. In this series, we will interview female criminal defense lawyers who practice in a specific area within criminal law. The goal of our series is to highlight the work and accomplishments of female criminal defense lawyers, but it is also a way for us to introduce you to specialty areas within criminal law. We hope we can help you find your niche. Enjoy the series. Hi, Janani. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Well, I see we have a double
Yes.
appointment and double interview today. So, can you
Oh.
introduce yourself and our baby guest, our first baby
Yes.
on
Yes.
the
So,
series?
my name is Janani Shanmuganathan, and this is my daughter, Mia. I am obviously a criminal defense lawyer. I have my own firm with my partner in life and in law. So, my husband, Owen Goddard. And I have a mixed practice. I do both trials and appeals, and I've also do a lot of things at the Law Society. So I represent lawyers.
And how old is Mia?
Mia is 7 months.
Hi, Mia. So, Janani, um, so let's start first by talking about your practice because you do have, you do both. You do trials and appeals. I think you do a lot. You've been doing a lot of appeals lately, right? Like we see your name um, a lot in the appellate world. So maybe if you can tell us about that, like how is the work? Is it demanding? We know it is, but maybe we'd like to hear your experience.
Sure. So I actually started in appeals. So I articled at Brian Greenspan's firm. And then after that, my first like real law job was at Durstein Penman, and I did the appeals there. So I had a bit of an unconventional path where I started off as a young lawyer and I was thrown into appeals right away. And um, so I started doing appeals and then I branched out and started doing trials, and now I do both. And I don't know, I really enjoy appeals. I think it's fun, one of my favorite places to go. And I think one of the places I'm the most comfortable at is at the Court of Appeal. Like courtroom 10 at the Court of Appeal is just a place that feels like home. It feels warm, it feels fun, and it's just a very intellectually stimulating experience to go to the court and talk about issues and have to respond to questions on the fly. I really enjoy that.
And so, do I get that correctly? You prefer doing appellate work as opposed to trial work, or not necessarily?
So I'm just going to pick her up.
No problem.
Okay. Uh, it's not that it's not that I enjoy it more. I think I really enjoy trials too, but I think because I started off by doing appeals, it's just something I'm more comfortable with. It's just
Comfortable. Yeah. Um,
sorry.
okay, yeah.
Oh no. Okay. Just give me 1 second.
No problem. All right, so I see Mia's doing well now. So, okay, well, since we have been interrupted by Mia, one of the things that I actually wanted to ask you about, Janani, is you became a lawyer, a mother, while you're already an established lawyer. You're a very busy trial and appellate lawyer. You have your very busy practice. You're doing super well, and now motherhood is a new role that you're taking on, and it's a full-time job. So tell us how has that affected your career and your job as a lawyer?
Yeah, it's been difficult. Um, I was saying to before we started recording that I thought about rescheduling this because today was a chaotic day and my husband is teaching tonight, so I'm at home alone with the baby and the dog. But I also felt like it's important for people to see that this is real life. This is what my life looks like. And sometimes the baby cries and everything doesn't go as expected. But I think for me, I'm happy with the way that it happened, in the sense that I was able to sort of, for like, I've been practicing now law for now more than 10 years. This will be my 11th year. And so I was able to practice law and establish my career for 10 years. And then I had a baby, because it feels like I can take some time away, even though I haven't really taken time away, but it feels like I'm not missing much. But that being said, it does feel difficult to practice law now, because I just feel like I'm constantly questioning myself. Like, do I have the same instinct like I had before? Sometimes, she'll cry in the middle of the night. I'm not getting enough sleep. And then I feel like, am I functioning the way that I should be functioning? Am I giving my clients the 100% that I'm used to giving them? So there's a lot of questions that accompany being a mom and being in law now.
And are these questions that that you started asking yourself now, just because you became a mom, or are these questions that you were asking yourself before, but you're just asking them maybe a bit more now that you're a mom?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always wondered, like, am I doing enough? Am I good enough? Like, imposter syndrome, all of those kinds of things. But it's funny, I feel like just before I got pregnant, I was starting to feel comfortable. Like, I was starting to feel experienced. I was starting to feel
Mhm.
like less of an imposter. And then I got pregnant and all the hormones, and then I had a baby, and it was almost like a step back, where I was starting to finally feel less like an imposter. And then motherhood hit, and then I'm starting to question myself in a different way all over again.
So, and in that questioning, are you thinking of joining the Crown Office? Because I think that's what we've been seeing on the defense side, sadly. I mean, it's been happening more and more, especially since the pandemic, that we've been losing a lot of excellent defense lawyers, especially female lawyers, after they became mothers. So, is that one of the questions, Janani,
No,
that's on your mind?
no, that's not one of the
Well,
questions. I think it's, for me, it's more of just like, do I still have like the same instincts that I'm used to having? And I know that I do. I think it's just more of like self doubt for myself.
okay, but okay, so let's just explore that if you don't mind. Like when you say
Hmm.
instincts, like you as a lawyer, like are you making the right connections in your mind? Like are you thinking about the right things? Is that what you mean when
It's like, I'll give an example. Um, it's funny. Had an I had an appeal a few days ago, and prior to the appeal, I was like, oh, she slept poorly that night, and I was worried. I don't know, like, am I going to be able to respond in the way that I normally do? And I did, and like, it was actually quite enjoyable. I really enjoyed going back to the Court of Appeal and feeling that stimulation again. So I think a lot of it is just self-doubt about, am I going to be able to perform in the manner that I'm accustomed to performing and expect of myself? But um, I think it's just like building that confidence up again, that motherhood hasn't changed the way that I'm a lawyer. It's just I'm practicing being a lawyer a little bit differently.
right. But I mean, it's something though that you mentioned you had before, right? That
Hmm.
imposter syndrome that sometimes you would question yourself and if you're doing uh the best thing for your client. And it is very surprising that you have these doubts and these questions, because I mean you're very known in Ontario, at least, for being a
Gosh.
very good, like appellate lawyer. So it might come as a surprise for a lot of people to hear that you, Janani, have these thoughts. So I mean, I don't know. I'm actually a bit surprised to hear that, so, because we don't see that when we see you, whether it's at conferences or like even when you were cross-examining the government not a long time ago. So I mean, how come you still have these doubts and questions?
Have it less, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a good way to keep oneself in check and be
Hmm.
humble and not be overconfident. I think that the risks of being overconfident are greater, or perhaps worse, than having a little bit of self doubt and feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome, because I think it keeps you wanting, it keeps you grounded and it keeps you wanting to learn and be a better version of yourself.
Right. No, definitely. I mean, and sometimes like I don't know, is it really imposter syndrome or is it just um you being demanding and very like tough on yourself? I mean, I don't, it's not necessarily that you're not good enough, or maybe it's just you're pushing yourself that you want to be so good that you know, like it maybe it translates into like doubt, but
Yeah, I'm sure it's like a combination of
yeah.
imposter syndrome and perfectionism and wanting to
Yeah.
be the best that I want for myself. So I don't know. I'm still sorting it all out about
Yeah.
how it is I feel.
Well, okay. So now that you are a mother and you're, you know, like obviously you're going to have to need more time for your family to give to your daughter. So do you think that motherhood would make you want to restructure maybe the way you practice law? Like maybe are you going to be doing more appeals now, not trials? Because I mean, the work is different. Like a trial work is different than appellate work. Appellate work is a lot of reading, a lot of writing. There is some oral argument. You have to go to court, but not as much as if you're a trial lawyer.
Mhm.
So, is that something that you're thinking about?
Think so. I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to do
Right.
it all, or if that's even a thing that's possible. But I think for me, just over these last 10 years, I figured out that I really like the variety. I like
Yeah.
doing trials, I like doing appeals, I like doing a little bit of regulatory. It keeps things interesting and less like monotonous. And so I don't think I would want to just do one or the other. I think I would like to do a combination, but I am going to be a lot more um, like I don't know what the word is, but like just like aware of how I schedule things. I'm not going to schedule things back to back, or I'm going to try to avoid Owen and I having something really stressful on the same day in case Mia gets sick and someone needs to take care of her. I think we have to be a lot more careful about our schedule and time, all that kind of stuff.
Right. And scheduling is actually a challenging thing for a lot of lawyers. So, how do you schedule your matters? Because it is a problem for a lot of lawyers, especially lawyers who take a lot of cases. And the majority of lawyers work on legal aid. And when you're with legal aid, you want to take as many cases as possible. And then scheduling becomes a nightmare. So, have you figured this out? What is your solution to this
I have
problem?
not figured it out, but I think it's just, I've had years where I've had, a trial, a couple of days off, another trial, an appeal. And like, I feel like I used to be able to do that. And I look back on that now and I'm like, I just can't sort of recover in the way that I used to be able to, where, you pour yourself into one matter and you're exhausted by the end of it. And then to
Yeah.
suddenly have to find the energy
Yeah.
to throw yourself back into another matter. And I think the reality now is with a baby, childcare arrangements fall through, people get sick, she gets sick, and it's just not tenable to sort of have that kind of scheduling like I used to be able to do.
Yeah. And I mean, like, trial work especially is very exhausting.
Hmm.
I mean, just a bail hearing can sometimes be exhausting. So it does require
Of
a
course.
lot
And
of
it's kind of like it's a 24/7 thing, right? You're in a trial, you're in a week-long trial, you're in court all day, you come home, you prepare. I feel like I dream about the trial. Like I swear, I like think about questions for cross-examination in my dreams. And so it's just a complete thing that you're doing 24/7. And to have to do that back to back, like kudos to the lawyers who can, but it's just not something I can do anymore.
yeah. Yeah. And honestly, I mean, like it's also it's maybe healthier to give yourself some space, whether you're a mom or not. It's just good to, you know, like have a few days where you can just disconnect from the case so that you can go on to the next case without bringing all the energy from the previous case. All right. And well, and in your case, your partner at work and in real life is also a lawyer. So does that help, Janani?
It's, well, it's interesting. Like I said, I worked at Durstein Penman, so I grew up under a married couple. So for
Yeah.
me, it was
Yeah.
normal and like I liked it. It was just, it sort of gave me hope that I could work with my own partner one day. And I think for us, it's just perfect. It's just exactly what works for our own family. It didn't make sense for us to be working in different places when we do the same thing. It doesn't make sense for us to have different firms when we're doing the same thing. And in many ways, working together has created more work-life balance because when we worked in different places, we would come home and we'd talk about work and it would eat into our personal time. Whereas now we talk about work like at work. And then when we come home, it's home time. And I think for me, I always give, some people always ask, like, oh, how do you work with your partner? Isn't that too much time together? But I just find it really fun. And I think the best example of that was Owen and I argued a case at the Supreme Court of Canada together, and we split our time, and he argued first, and I was arguing after him, and it was both of our first time arguing at the Supreme Court. And I remember when he was at the podium and he was making submissions, like I was so happy and I was so excited, and I was like so I was just admiring how well he was doing, and I was just so proud. And before I knew it, his time flew by and it was my turn. And it was so great because I didn't get time to be nervous about me going up because I was just so engrossed in what he was doing. And that's kind of how I always feel doing trials with him or appeals with him, that it's just like a fun project for us to do together. And we're able to split the work 50-50, and we can wholly trust the other person to do as good a job as we would want to do for ourselves. So it's just something that works really well for us.
And do you think Mia will follow in your steps? And
I don't know. I think it's she's so young, but it's one of those things where Owen and I have talked about this. I would never want to pressure her into wanting
yeah,
to be a lawyer, but neither of us knew any lawyers growing up, and it's just going to be such a different experience for her. Like she's never going to feel like she doesn't belong in this profession because both her parents are lawyers, and like wouldn't it be so
right.
nice for her to like start in a profession and feel like, of course I belong in here, right? Whereas it's not something I ever felt like. I always felt like an outsider. So I wouldn't want to push her into it, but if she wanted to, like, of course, I would encourage it.
Well, and maybe if we can just spend the last few minutes of
Mhm.
the interview talking about this point of feeling like an outsider, and I guess it relates also to your background because uh, you have an ethnic background. Where are you originally from, Janani?
Yes, so I'm Tamil. I'm Sri Lankan Tamil.
Okay, and so were you born and raised in Canada?
Well, I was born there, but I came here when I was 3, so I pretty much grew up here.
Okay, but still, I mean, so when you say that you felt like an outsider, was it because of your ethnicity, or is it an outsider just because you didn't have connections in criminal law, or is it both? Sometimes it's
I
both.
think it's both. When we think of what a lawyer looks like, just based
Yeah,
on TV and movies, you don't, this is not the image that comes up when you think of
right.
of a lawyer. And so I think just not knowing any lawyers and the idea of what a lawyer would look like as I started the profession, and just looking around at the time that I started, and the lawyers that you saw, they didn't really look like me, that it was hard to feel like I belonged in a profession when I couldn't see it resembled anywhere else.
Right. But I mean, obviously, right now, you don't have that feeling anymore, right? I mean, you do feel that you belong to this profession and you're actually one of the lawyers who are contributing to the profession.
Uh, yes, I think I mean, it took a long time, and I do feel like I belong in it. And I hate this idea of, sorry, one second.
Yeah.
I hate, I hate the term like role model because I don't feel like I've done anything to merit the term, but like I'm happy to be that. If me being in this profession means that people who are coming up feel like they belong because they see um, a lawyer that looks like them in the profession, then I'm really happy. And I do feel like the profession, the face of the profession is changing. There do seem to
Yeah.
be more racialized people, like they're just coming into the profession versus being senior in the profession. But I think with time, as people like me of my vintage, as we get older, we're going to become senior, and hopefully the profession will look different than it did when I started.
And so if I'm going to ask you just for tips that you can give to lawyers who come from a different background and who have no connections in law and who feel like an outsider, what tips would you have for them so they can overcome that feeling?
I think it's like one of those things where it is not a feeling that is going to go away right away. And it's not a feeling that's going to go away simply by someone giving you a pep talk. I think it's just a feeling that goes away when you start to feel more comfortable with yourself in the profession. And it just is something I always tell people, the 5-year mark is this beautiful point in time where you start to feel like, oh, like things aren't super new anymore. I know some things. And then if I don't know something, I know how to figure it out. And so I think that if somebody like me can live in this profession and last in this profession for 10 plus years, then like anyone can. There's nothing special about it. And so if I can do it, you can do it too.
Thank you so much, Janani, for this interview, and thank you for bringing Mia as well. It was very nice to meet her, and I think we stole you away from her, so that's why she's.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sorry to the viewers for her bit of crying, but this is real life now. So yeah.
She's super cute, and she's our first baby guest. And hopefully, we don't know. Maybe one day she'll be interviewed. So
All right. Well, thanks so much for having
thank
me.
you so much, Janani.